Don't give him the key unless he is wearing that ring. Those were the last words Mia Johnson's mother whispered before hiding the small silver key beneath an old piece of cloth. And 3 days later, inside the marble hallway of the Moretti mansion, the little girl finally found the man she had been waiting for. Alessandro Moretti, the man everyone in the city knew as the head of the Moretti family, had just stepped out of a private meeting when a tiny figure appeared at the end of the hallway. The mansion was quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed in places where every person knew exactly where they belonged. Staff members lowered their eyes when Alessandro walked by. Executives stopped talking. Guests moved aside. But the little girl in the faded blue dress did something nobody expected. She walked straight toward him. Mia was only 4 years old. She was the daughter of Elena Johnson, one of the housekeepers who worked in the mansion. She was not supposed to be in the family hallway. She was not supposed to approach Alessandro. And she was definitely not supposed to place anything in the hand of the man who controlled everything inside that house. But Mia did exactly that. She stopped in front of Alessandro, looked up at him for a moment, and slowly opened her tiny hand. A cold piece of silver touched his palm. A key. Alessandro looked down. At first, he thought it was just another forgotten object from the mansion. Then he saw the symbol engraved on the metal. A small letter M surrounded by an old family mark. His expression changed. The symbol had not appeared anywhere in the Moretti records for years. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Mia did not answer. She simply looked at the ring on his finger. The old Moretti family ring that Alessandro wore every day. The same ring his father had worn before him. Then the little girl turned around and started walking away. No explanation, no request, no tears. Just a small child leaving behind a question that suddenly felt heavier than the key itself. Alessandro remained still. A man who had spent his entire life making decisions in seconds could not move. Because the strangest part was not that Mia had the key. The strangest part was that she acted like she was only delivering a message. "Sir," one of the guards said carefully, "should we take it and have it checked?" Alessandro did not respond immediately. His eyes stayed on the little girl walking back toward the servants' area. Before he could answer, Victoria Moretti appeared from the other side of the hallway. His fiancée wore a calm smile, the same elegant expression she showed at charity events and family gatherings. But when she saw the key in Alessandro's hand, something changed for a fraction of a second, a moment most people would have missed. Alessandro did not. "You should not open that," Victoria said quietly. The hallway became silent. Alessandro slowly turned toward her. He had not told anyone what the key was connected to. He had not mentioned opening anything. He had not even said he planned to keep it. "Open what?" he asked. Victoria paused. Just for a second. But that second was enough. For the first time in years, Alessandro Moretti felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Doubt. Not about the little girl. About the people standing around him. Mia had walked into the most powerful house in the city carrying nothing but an old key and a memory from her mother. Yet somehow, she had created a question that nobody in that mansion could answer. Why did a 4-year-old child have a key that powerful people wanted forgotten? And why was the person who feared it the most the one person who should have known nothing about it? For the first time in many years, Alessandro Moretti did not care about the meeting waiting for him, the contracts on his desk, or the messages filling his phone. He only cared about one small silver key sitting inside his palm. The entire mansion had become strangely quiet after Mia walked away. Staff members continued their work, but everyone felt the tension moving through the halls. They had all seen the same thing. The little girl who usually carried folded towels beside her mother had walked into the family area and handed Alessandro something that made the most powerful people in the house uncomfortable. Elena Johnson found Mia near the servants' hallway, holding her old stuffed animal close to her chest. She looked worried, but not because she had done something wrong. She looked worried because she knew adults were upset. "Mia, honey, did you give Mr. Moretti the key?" Elena asked softly. Mia nodded. "Did you tell him anything?" Elena asked. The little girl shook her head. "Mommy said only give it to the man with the ring." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She had hoped this day would never come. She had spent years protecting that small piece of the past, hoping the truth would stay hidden until the right moment. But now the moment had arrived. Upstairs, Alessandro stood in his private office with the key on his desk. Victoria stood across from him, calm and composed again. "You are making too much of this," she said. "It is probably something old from the house staff area. Children find things all the time." Alessandro looked at her carefully. "Then why did you tell me not to open it?" Victoria remained silent for a second. "Because I know this family. I know old things create unnecessary problems." It was a reasonable answer, almost too reasonable. Alessandro had built his reputation by noticing small details. Person choosing the wrong words. Pause before answering. A change in tone. And right now, Victoria was trying very hard to appear relaxed. He picked up the key again. "Where does it belong?" he asked. Victoria smiled slightly. "I have no idea." But Alessandro noticed something. She did not look confused. She looked concerned. Later that afternoon, Alessandro reviewed the mansion security records. He did not search for Mia. He searched for the key. The camera footage showed something unusual. 3 days earlier, Elena had entered the old laundry storage room. She stayed there for less than 2 minutes. She did not take anything valuable. She simply opened a small wooden box hidden behind old linens. The same box where the key had been kept. Alessandro watched the footage twice. Then a third time. Elena was not stealing. She was protecting something. Before he could continue, his security director brought another piece of information. "Sir, there is something else. The old family symbol on that key matches a mark from the private archives. It was connected to a room that no longer appears on the current mansion records." Alessandro looked up. "A room?" "Yes, Room 17. The name seemed to change the atmosphere around him. Room 17. A place he had heard about as a child but had always been told was just an old storage room. A place his father never allowed anyone to enter. Alessandro leaned back in his chair, thinking about Mia. She was 4 years old. She could not understand business, inheritance, or family secrets. She could not know why that key mattered. But she knew where it came from, and she knew exactly who needed to receive it. Meanwhile, in the hallway outside the office, Victoria watched Elena return to work with Mia beside her. Her expression remained polite for everyone else. But when nobody was looking, she sent a message from her phone. "He has the key." A few seconds later, another message appeared. "Then we need to know what the child remembers." That was the first moment Alessandro realized the question was no longer about a key. It was about why everyone was suddenly afraid of a little girl who had not said a single word. He looked through the office window toward the mansion hallway where Mia had disappeared earlier. A child with no power, no position, and no reason to be involved had somehow become the only person standing between the truth and the people trying to hide it. And Alessandro Moretti was about to discover that the most important secrets in his family were not kept by the powerful. They were kept by the people everyone ignored. The next morning, Alessandro Moretti returned to the old west wing of the mansion, a place most people rarely entered. The hallway was different from the rest of the house. The marble floors were covered with a thin layer of dust. The paintings were older, and the lights above the ceiling flickered slightly as if the past itself was waiting in the darkness. In his hand was the silver key Mia had given him. He had spent the entire night thinking about one question. How did a 4-year-old girl know where to find something that even his own family had forgotten? He had questioned Elena carefully. He had reviewed security footage. He had checked every record available. But every answer created another question. Elena was not acting like someone hiding a secret for personal gain. She looked like someone carrying a responsibility that had become too heavy over the years. Before opening the door at the end of the hallway, Alessandro stopped. Room 17. The number his father never allowed anyone to mention. The number that disappeared from official mansion records after his father's death. He placed the key into the lock, but before turning it, he noticed something tied around the bottom of the key. A small piece of faded fabric. He recognized it immediately. It was from the same old cloth Elena had used to wrap the key. But there was something stitched inside. A tiny photograph, carefully hidden between the layers. Alessandro removed it slowly. The picture showed his father standing in the mansion garden many years earlier. Beside him was a young Elena, much younger than she was now. She was not wearing a servant uniform. She was holding a small notebook. Alessandro stared at the image. He had never seen this photograph before. On the back, there was handwriting he recognized instantly. His father's handwriting. Some people protect the truth because they want power. Others protect it because they know what happens when nobody does. Alessandro read the sentence twice. Then he looked toward the hallway where Mia had stood the day before. A child who barely spoke had somehow delivered a message his father had hidden for years. He opened the door. Inside room 17 was not what he expected. There were no expensive items, no family treasures displayed for admiration. The room looked like a place someone had prepared for a future discovery. There was a wooden desk covered with old papers, a small bookshelf, a locked cabinet, and on the wall was a faded family photograph. Alessandro walked closer. His father's face was serious in the picture. Not angry, not afraid, concerned. On the desk, he found a small envelope with his name written on it. Alessandro Moretti. His hand paused before opening it. The letter inside was short. Alessandro, if you are reading this, then the person I trusted most has already been forgotten by everyone else. He continued reading. Do not look for the person who benefits from my absence. Look for the person who was ignored while everyone else was watching. Alessandro lowered the paper slowly. The words felt impossible, because there was only one person in the mansion who fit that description. Elena Johnson, the woman everyone walked past. The woman who served meals, cleaned rooms, and was never invited into family conversations. The woman who had protected a key for years without asking for anything. Suddenly, a small memory returned to Alessandro. When he was a child, his father had once told him that loyalty was not measured by how loudly someone promised to stand beside you. It was measured by what they protected when nobody was watching. A quiet sound came from the hallway. Alessandro turned and saw Mia standing near the doorway holding her old stuffed animal. She was not trying to enter. She was simply waiting. Did you find it? She asked softly. It was the first full sentence she had spoken directly to him. Alessandro looked at the little girl. Did your mother tell you about this room? Mia shook her head. No. Mommy said I should only give the key. She looked at the open door. She said the room remembers. Alessandro felt a strange feeling he had not experienced in years. Not fear. Not suspicion. Something closer to understanding. Mia did not know the whole story. She did not need to. She had carried one small piece of it until the right person was ready to see it. But before Alessandro could ask another question, his phone rang. It was his security director. Sir, you need to see this. Someone accessed the old archive system last night. Alessandro looked back at room 17. The timing was too precise. Someone knew he had found the key. Someone knew he was getting closer. And for the first time, Alessandro understood the real mystery was not what his father had hidden. It was who had been trying so desperately to make sure nobody ever found it. The message from Alessandro's security director changed the atmosphere inside room 17. Someone had accessed the old archive system during the night. Not an employee mistake. Not a random error. Someone had entered a place that was supposed to be forgotten. Alessandro looked at the letter from his father again, then at the small key resting on the desk. For years, he believed secrets in his family were hidden because people wanted money or control. But now he was beginning to understand something different. Some secrets were hidden because the truth itself could change everything. He closed the door to room 17 and walked back through the mansion with a different purpose. He was no longer searching for an object. He was searching for the person who was afraid of what that object revealed. Before making any accusations, Alessandro decided to test the people around him. He needed proof, not assumptions. He called his security director and gave one simple instruction. Do not tell anyone what we found. Then he placed the silver key back inside his pocket and returned to the main part of the mansion as if nothing had happened. Victoria was waiting in the family dining room. She looked calm, prepared, and completely in control. "Did you find anything interesting in the old wing?" she asked. Alessandro sat down across from her. He watched carefully. "Nothing important," he replied. It was a lie and he knew it, but he needed to see what she would do with that information. Victoria smiled softly. "I told you, old things only create confusion." Alessandro nodded and changed the subject. But later that afternoon, his security team showed him something unexpected. A hidden camera from the hallway near room 17 had captured Victoria stopping outside the door 2 nights earlier. She never entered. She never touched the handle. She simply stood there and looked at the door for several minutes. Then she called someone. Alessandro watched the footage silently. He did not need to hear the conversation to know something was wrong. A person who had no connection to the room should not have been standing there in the middle of the night. But Alessandro needed more. He needed to know why. Meanwhile, Mia was sitting in the small staff dining area with Elena. The little girl was coloring on a piece of paper while her mother prepared tea. Elena looked exhausted. "Mia, did you tell Mr. Moretti anything else?" she asked. Mia shook her head. "Only the key." Elena looked down. "Good." Mia paused and looked at her mother. "Mommy, are they angry?" Elena forced a small smile. "No, sweetheart. Sometimes adults get scared when they find things they forgot." Mia looked at the old stuffed animal beside her. The key was lonely. Elena froze for a moment. "What did you say?" Mia touched the toy gently. The key was lonely. It waited in the box for a long time. Elena realized something important. Mia did not understand the family secret. She understood something simpler. She remembered objects, places, feelings, the things adults thought children did not notice. That evening, Alessandro requested the original mansion records from 10 years earlier. The documents arrived in a locked archive folder. Inside was a maintenance report showing something strange. Room 17 had been sealed officially after his father's death. But 3 months later, someone had paid for the lock to be replaced. The person who approved the payment was not Alessandro's father. It was Victoria's family lawyer. Alessandro stared at the document. The answer was becoming clearer, but he still needed the missing piece. He needed to know what was inside the room that someone had worked so hard to protect. Then his phone received a new message from an unknown number. There was only one sentence. "The child does not know what she carries." Alessandro looked toward the hallway where Mia had disappeared earlier. His expression changed. Whoever sent that message had made one mistake. They had underestimated the little girl. And they had revealed something even more important. They were watching her. Alessandro put the phone down and made a decision. He would not confront anyone yet. He would let them believe they were still hidden. Because now he was no longer simply looking for the truth. He was building the evidence that would make the truth impossible to deny. The next morning, Alessandro Moretti arrived at the mansion earlier than usual. The house was already awake, but something felt different. The staff moved quietly. Conversations stopped whenever he walked by. Everyone could sense that something had changed, even if nobody knew exactly what it was. Alessandro had spent the entire night reviewing every piece of information connected to room 17. He had the maintenance records. He had the camera footage. He had the message from the unknown sender. But he still needed one thing. Proof that could not be explained away. A suspicion could be ignored. A feeling could be questioned. But evidence was different. Evidence forced people to face reality. Inside his office, Alessandro placed 3 items on his desk. The silver key, the old photograph, the maintenance report showing that someone replaced the lock after his father's death. Each item told a different part of the story, but there was still a missing piece connecting them all. His security director entered the room carrying a small folder. "Sir, we found something from the old archive backups." Alessandro opened the folder. Inside was a copy of a document that had never appeared in the official family records. It was a transfer agreement connected to Moretti family assets. At first glance, everything looked normal. The signatures were there. The dates were there. But Alessandro noticed something immediately. The signature at the bottom belonged to his father. The problem was simple. The date on the document was after his father had already stopped signing personal agreements. Someone had created a document and attached his father's name to it. Alessandro looked at the paper for a long moment. This was not just a hidden room. This was a carefully built story designed to make people believe something that was never true. Later that afternoon, Alessandro returned to the servants' area. He found Mia sitting on the floor, carefully organizing small objects beside her stuffed animal. A ribbon, a button, a small piece of paper. Things that seemed meaningless to adults. But Mia remembered every detail. "Mia," Alessandro said gently, "where did your mother find the key?" The little girl looked at him. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked to a small, wooden box near the laundry room. She opened it and pointed inside. There was nothing valuable there, just old fabric and a faded note. Alessandro picked up the note carefully. It was written by Elena years earlier. The handwriting was simple. "Do not give this to anyone who wants it. Give it only to the person who needs the truth." Alessandro looked at Mia. "Did your mother tell you what was inside the room?" Mia shook her head. She said grown-ups forget things, but doors remember. The sentence stayed with him. A child had no idea about family politics or legal documents. She only understood what she had seen and heard. That made her more believable, not less. Meanwhile, Victoria met with the family lawyer in a private sitting room. She kept her voice calm. She asked simple questions. She wanted to know what Alessandro had discovered. But the lawyer made a mistake. He answered too quickly. If he opens the archive completely, the old agreement will become useless. Victoria became silent. Neither of them realized someone was listening from the hallway. Alessandro's security team captured the conversation through the mansion monitoring system. It was not enough to prove everything yet. But it was the first time someone from Victoria's side had connected themselves directly to the hidden documents. Alessandro replayed the recording several times. Then he looked at the small photograph of his father and Elena. The truth was no longer buried. It was slowly coming back piece by piece. But there was one question he still could not answer. Why had Elena protected this secret for so many years without using it to help herself? That question mattered because it changed everything. If Elena wanted power, she had many chances to take it. Instead, she chose silence. She chose to protect a promise. And now Alessandro had to decide something difficult. Should he continue pretending he knew nothing and gather more evidence? Or should he confront the people who had been hiding the truth inside his own home? Before he could decide, a new document appeared on his desk. It was a notice for an emergency family meeting. The person who requested it was Victoria. The woman who claimed there was nothing to worry about was now forcing everyone into a room together. Alessandro looked at the invitation and understood one thing. The next move was no longer his. The people hiding the truth were about to reveal how far they were willing to go to keep it hidden. The emergency family meeting was scheduled for 8 o'clock that evening, and for the first time in years, Alessandro Moretti arrived before everyone else. He stood at the head of the long dining room table, looking at the empty chairs around him. Every chair represented someone who had been close to him, people who had shared his family's history, people who claimed to protect the Moretti name. Yet somewhere inside that same house, someone had been quietly rewriting his family's story. Alessandro placed the old photograph beside the silver key and waited. When Victoria entered, she looked completely composed. She was dressed elegantly, carrying the same confidence she showed at every public event. Behind her came the family lawyer Matteo and the estate manager Marco. They looked prepared, almost too prepared. "Alessandro," Victoria said with a calm smile, "I hope this meeting is not about that old room again." The sentence was simple, but it confirmed something important. She knew exactly what he was thinking about. Alessandro did not react. "Why would you assume that?" he asked. For the first time, Victoria hesitated. It lasted only a moment, but Alessandro noticed. He had spent years learning that people often revealed the truth before they realized they were speaking. Before the meeting continued, Alessandro received a message from his security director. The final piece of information had arrived. A digital copy of the old transfer agreement had been recovered from a hidden archive backup. It contained a detail nobody expected. The document was not only connected to the false family transfer. It also included a witness signature. Elena Johnson's name was listed at the bottom. The room became silent when Alessandro placed the document on the table. Victoria looked at Elena. "So this is what you were hiding?" she asked. The accusation was gentle, almost sympathetic. That was what made it dangerous. She was not attacking Elena loudly. She was making everyone question her. Elena lowered her eyes. She had spent years being careful, because she knew people with power could change the story before anyone listened to her. But before she could answer, Mia walked into the room holding her old stuffed animal. Everyone turned toward her. Alessandro immediately noticed something. Mia was not afraid. She was simply confused about why all the adults were looking at her mother. She walked to Elena and held her hand. A small action. Nothing dramatic. But it changed the room. Alessandro looked at Victoria. Then at the document. Then at Mia. He understood something important. The person who had the least power had also been the person carrying the greatest responsibility. "Elena," Alessandro said quietly, "why did you never tell me about this?" Elena took a deep breath. "Because your father asked me not to use the truth as a weapon." The room became still. She continued. "He told me that if the day came when someone tried to take what belonged to you, I should not fight with anger. I should wait until the truth could stand on its own." Alessandro looked down. His father had always valued patience. But he never imagined that patience would be protected by someone everyone ignored. Elena explained that after his father's death, she discovered suspicious changes in the family documents. She found the replacement lock on room 17. She found missing files. She found signs that someone wanted the past to disappear. But she had no money, no influence, and no way to challenge powerful people. So she protected what she could. The key, the photograph, the promise. The evidence chain slowly became clear. The key opened the room. The room contained the original records. The records connected to the false documents. And the false documents connected to the people sitting at the table. Victoria remained calm, but her confidence was fading. "This proves nothing," she said. "Old papers and memories do not change reality." Alessandro looked at her. "No, but patterns do." He placed the security footage, the recovered documents, and the recorded conversation. Together, not one piece alone was enough. Together they told a story of people who believed nobody would ever connect the pieces. Later that night, Alessandro stood alone in his office with Mia's key on the desk. He finally understood why his father trusted Elena. She never tried to control the truth. She only protected it until someone was ready to hear it. But there was still one thing Alessandro needed before making his final move. He needed Victoria to reveal her own plan in front of everyone. And now he knew exactly how to make that happen. Alessandro Moretti had spent his entire life believing that power meant control. Control over business decisions. Control over information. Control over every person who entered his world. But now he understood something he had never considered before. The people closest to him had not been waiting for him to lose control. They had been waiting for him to stop looking. And the person who noticed everything was the one person everyone ignored. Mia Johnson. The next morning, Alessandro walked through the mansion as if nothing had changed. He greeted the staff. He answered calls. He reviewed business reports. To anyone watching, he looked exactly the same. But behind that calm expression, he was building a plan. He did not want Victoria to know how much he had discovered. He did not want Matteo, the family lawyer, to know the evidence was already being collected. He needed them to believe they still had the advantage. Because the truth was not complete yet. Alessandro needed them to reveal the final step of their plan themselves. His first move was simple. He told Victoria that he had decided to review the family documents again. but he said there was no need to worry because the old records did not appear important. Victoria relaxed immediately. It was the reaction Alessandro had been waiting for. She became more confident, more comfortable. She started making calls she thought nobody would hear. Meanwhile, Alessandro's security team continued gathering information. They recovered deleted emails from the archive system. They reviewed financial transfers connected to the false documents. They compared the signatures from the old agreements with verified family records. Each piece added another layer to the truth. But Alessandro still needed one final connection. The reason behind everything. Later that afternoon, Mia was sitting in the garden with her mother. She was drawing pictures with colored pencils. Alessandro watched from a distance for a moment. He noticed something that stayed with him. Mia was not drawing money, houses, or anything related to the world of adults. She was drawing the hallway, the old door, the small silver key. She had remembered every detail because those details mattered to her. Alessandro walked closer. "What are you drawing?" he asked. Mia looked up. The door that was waiting. Alessandro smiled slightly. "Why do you think it was waiting?" Mia looked at the picture. "Because nobody opened it." The answer was simple, but it carried a meaning Alessandro could not ignore. The truth had not disappeared. It had only been locked away. That evening, Alessandro received another important discovery. The lawyer Matteo had prepared a final agreement that would transfer control of several family assets. The document was scheduled to be presented at the upcoming family meeting. The strange part was the timing. The agreement was prepared before Alessandro had officially approved any changes. Someone was already acting as if his decision had been made. Alessandro looked at the document and finally understood the full strategy. They were not trying to convince him. They were trying to make him believe there was no choice left. But they had made one mistake. They assumed he would react emotionally. They assumed he would confront them immediately. They did not understand that Alessandro Moretti had learned something from Mia. Sometimes the person who says the least sees the most. Before the day ended, Alessandro placed one final piece into position. He instructed his team to prepare a complete evidence package. Every document, every recording, every connection. But he did not want to use it privately. He wanted the truth to appear in the same place where lies had been protected. In front of the people who helped build them. Victoria believed she was preparing the final meeting where she would secure control of the Moretti family. She did not know Alessandro had already seen the entire picture. She did not know the little girl she dismissed as invisible had already opened the door. And soon, everyone would see what was hidden behind it. The Moretti family meeting began at exactly 9 o'clock in the evening. The same room where generations of the family had made decisions was now prepared for the moment when the truth would finally be heard. The long wooden table was polished. The family documents were arranged neatly. Every important person connected to the Moretti name was present. Victoria arrived first with complete confidence. She believed she was walking into a meeting where she would secure her future. She believed Alessandro was still searching for answers. She believed she was one step ahead. What she did not know was that Alessandro had already seen the entire picture. He simply wanted everyone else to see it too. Alessandro entered the room carrying a small folder. He placed it on the table without saying anything. Victoria smiled. "I assume this is about the old records," she said. "I hope we can finally put those unnecessary questions behind us." Alessandro looked at her calmly. "We will." The words sounded simple, but something about his tone made the room feel different. Victoria sat down. Matteo, the family lawyer, opened his documents. He began explaining the agreement that would supposedly protect the Moretti family's future. He spoke about stability, responsibility, and tradition. Every sentence sounded professional. Every word sounded reasonable. That was exactly why the plan had worked for so long. It was never hidden behind obvious lies. It was hidden behind paperwork and carefully chosen words. Then Alessandro placed the first piece of evidence on the table. The original family document from room 17. The room became silent. Matteo immediately recognized it. His expression changed before he could control it. Alessandro noticed. "Interesting," Alessandro said. "You recognize a document you claimed never existed." Matteo quickly recovered. "I recognize the format. That does not prove anything." Alessandro nodded. "Correct. One document proves very little." Then he placed another item on the table. The maintenance record showing the lock replacement on room 17. Then the archive record showing the false transfer agreement. Then the recovered email connecting the changes to Matteo's office. Each piece alone could be questioned. Together, they created a clear pattern. Victoria remained quiet. She was still trying to understand how much Alessandro knew. Then Alessandro placed the final piece in front of everyone. The recorded conversation. The room filled with the sound of Victoria's own words. Not an accusation. Not a rumor. Her own planning. Her own decisions. For the first time that evening, Victoria's confidence disappeared. She looked at Alessandro. "You recorded me?" she asked. Alessandro shook his head. "No. I listened when you thought nobody was paying attention." The sentence changed the atmosphere completely, because everyone in the room understood what had happened. The people who believed they controlled the story had been revealing it piece by piece. Alessandro then turned toward Elena. "For years, you were treated like someone who did not belong in this room." Elena looked down quietly. She was not used to being recognized. "But you protected the truth when everyone else protected their own interests." Mia stood beside her mother, holding her old stuffed animal. She looked around the room, confused by the attention. She did not understand contracts or family disputes. She only understood that her mother was no longer standing alone. Alessandro looked at the people around the table. The person everyone ignored was the person who protected this family. Nobody interrupted. Nobody questioned it. Even the people who had doubted Elena could not deny the evidence in front of them. Victoria tried one final argument. "You are choosing a housekeeper over your own family." Alessandro looked at her. "No. I am choosing the truth over people who used family as an excuse." The room went silent. The power had shifted. Not because Alessandro raised his voice. Not because he threatened anyone. The power shifted because facts had replaced assumptions. By the end of the meeting, the false documents were removed from consideration. Matteo was formally removed from handling Moretti family matters pending legal review. Victoria's influence inside the family was gone. But Alessandro knew one thing remained unfinished. The truth had been proven. The wrong people had been exposed. Yet the people who had been forgotten still needed something more than an apology. They needed their place restored. And Alessandro knew exactly where that had to begin. The days after the family meeting felt different inside the Moretti mansion. For the first time in years, the house was quiet in a way that did not feel heavy. The silence was no longer the silence of people hiding secrets. It was the silence of people finally accepting the truth. Alessandro Moretti spent the morning reviewing the final steps needed to correct everything that had been changed behind his back. The false agreements were removed from the family records. The legal documents were sent for independent review. The people responsible for manipulating the system were no longer able to control the story. But Alessandro knew that fixing paperwork was only one part of the damage. There were people who had been hurt by being ignored. People who had spent years believing their voices did not matter. And he knew exactly where the first apology needed to happen. The same hallway where Mia had first handed him the key. The same hallway where everyone had looked at her as if she did not belong. Elena stood there with Mia beside her. She looked uncomfortable with all the attention. For years, she had walked through that mansion quietly, cleaning rooms, preparing meals, and making sure everyone else had what they needed. She never expected anyone to stand there and thank her. Alessandro approached her slowly. "Elena," he said, "there is something this family should have said a long time ago." She looked up. "Thank you." The simple words surprised her more than any grand gesture could have. Alessandro continued, "Not because you protected a document, not because you kept a key, because you protected a promise when nobody would have blamed you for walking away." Elena looked down, trying to hold back her emotions. I only did what I believed was right. Alessandro nodded. And that is exactly why it mattered. Later that day, Alessandro made another decision. He created a formal position within the Moretti Family Foundation for long-term household employees who had spent years supporting the family but had never had a voice in important decisions. It was not a gift. It was recognition. A way to make sure people like Elena would no longer be invisible. When the announcement was made, some people expected Alessandro to simply reward the person who helped him uncover the truth. But that was not what happened. He explained that the problem was never only about one missing key or one hidden room. The problem was that powerful people had become so focused on protecting their own interests that they stopped noticing the people around them. Mia watched from beside her mother, holding the same old stuffed animal she carried through the entire journey. Alessandro noticed the little silver key was still attached to the small ribbon around it. He smiled. "Do you know what that key did, Mia?" he asked. The little girl looked at him. It opened the door. Alessandro nodded. Yes, but it also reminded everyone that some doors stay closed because people are afraid of what they will find. Mia thought for a moment. But doors are supposed to open. Alessandro smiled. It was a simple answer from a child, but it carried the lesson he had needed his entire life. The key was placed inside the Moretti family archive, not as a symbol of wealth or power, but as a reminder that truth can come from unexpected places. The old photograph of his father and Elena was placed beside it. The story of what happened was recorded honestly, including the years when Elena was ignored and the moment when Mia brought the truth back into the light. Months later, the mansion looked the same from the outside. The same gates, the same walls, the same long hallways. But inside, something had changed. Mia no longer walked through the house as the daughter of someone people barely noticed. She walked through it as the little girl who reminded a powerful family what loyalty really meant. Alessandro still carried his father's watch. He still ran businesses. He still made difficult decisions. But he no longer measured strength only by control. He measured it by responsibility. One evening, he passed the hallway where everything began. He stopped and looked at the place where Mia had once placed the key in his hand without saying a word. A moment that seemed small at the time had changed everything. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person who sees what everyone else missed. And sometimes the smallest hand can open the door to the biggest truth.